Marty, why don't you kick it off?
Well, just what have been your impressions so far? Anything that you've heard that's been especially relevant to your experience, just on the speakers that we've had this morning?
I think much of it resonated with us. There were a couple of key kind of things that stood out to us, particularly the idea of millennials and where food companies were, say, 20 years ago and where they're having to go. And we've always felt that we've watched this trend just personally in our own families shift from more of a processed food to more of a real food. And I think that that's not just the millennial generation. I think that it has to do with education. We have an educated consumer now that wants to know what the ingredients are in the products. And I think that goes across the board, millennials and anybody else that's out there on the internet, social media.
So there's a lot of competition in bone broth right now. People are really coming on board. What makes Bonafide different?
Well, first of all, we were pioneers. We've been doing this since 2011. I started using bone broth for my son 11 years ago to heal him of chronic sinus infections. One of our points of differentiation is that it's nutritionist crafted. So we are very purposeful in our ingredients. And the idea of bone broth and why we came up with the idea of coming up with a company was there wasn't one on the market that was a real bone broth. And so what differentiates us between the others and why we've been able to be pioneers and lead this category is because of the products. And you have a consumer set that is educated. You have millennials that understand that bone broth is supposed to gel. Bone broth isn't supposed to be where grocers have put it on the grocery aisle. It's supposed to be in the frozen section, exactly the way we make it at home. You need to cook your bones 24 to 48 hours. You need to source your meat and know where the product comes from. And so I think because we've done all of those things, we've been able to pioneer the category and catapult it and actually create a new category within the frozen section. And so we do see a lot of bone broth companies coming onto the market, but I think their challenge is going to be able to stick to what a true bone broth is. You're going to start seeing them take shortcuts, which is actually what they did back in the 1940s and 50s when they took it off of grandma's stoves and put it on the supermarket shelves.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned consumers are sort of educated and sort of aware of this, but what about on the retail side? How do you sort of communicate to them, as you mentioned, they're putting their stuff in the wrong place?
Yeah, that was interesting.
It's been a journey, educating the retailers and kind of reteaching them but once we explain it and we say this was once on grandma's stove, it was once in the fridge, and then it went to a shelf, they kind of, that's something that they understand and they go, oh yeah, I remember when my grandma made this or my great-grandma made this. And so it's this innate knowledge that we're just kind of reminding them of. And then once they have that reminder, they're a lot more open and like understanding of the idea that bone broth should be found in the frozen section. So.
And also, guys, when we brought this category to market, we again brought this category because we wanted to make a bone broth just like we did at home. We're nutritionists. We would suggest this to our patients, and there wasn't one that was on the market that people could use to actually use as food as the medicine. And so when we presented it to the grocery stores, they said to us, don't go in the frozen section. First of all, it's super competitive. The space is competitive. It's limited. And that's not where a consumer shops. But we remembered what happened with sauerkraut. So 20 years ago, when I used to shop for sauerkraut with my mom, we would walk down the grocery aisle and we would be looking for that sauerkraut in a can. That shifted when consumers started to understand the benefits of having a refrigerated sauerkraut. You lose all the benefits when it's stuck on a grocery aisle.
So I want to roll it back for a minute because to this idea of food as medicine. And, my grandmother made bone broth, but it was, with matzo balls in it. And, and that was supposed to be sort of Jewish penicillin.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to know, is there a plan for bone broth with canadles at any point? No.
Yeah, let's talk.
Second, but beyond that, I want you guys to settle sort of an ongoing debate and discussion that we have, which is this stuff a beverage? Is it a food?
Right.
Yes.
Both.
Yes and yes. And really, that's what the consumer segment it is. It is a beverage. And for people who are using it for medicinal purposes that have chronic illnesses, that's, again, the people that we worked with, thousands of patients all across the country, healing themselves, using bone broth as a base from Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, colitis, celiac disease. They are using it as a beverage, and they are consuming a lot of broth to help seal that mucosal lining of the gut. Others are using it as a cooking ingredient.
And we're seeing that. We're being taught different ways to use it from our social media community. I have people sending me recipes, and I'm like, that's great. I had no idea.
Today, the post with the turmeric.
Yeah, we have. We were just featured on Well and Good today with the bone broth latte that we had created. So there's all of these, and that's a beverage.
Sort of a blatte.
Yeah.
A blatte. Hashtag blatte. That's going to be our new thing. Yeah. So it's both, and certainly cooking with it, the home chefs and the foodies, that really appeals to them. But I personally drink it as a beverage. I cook with it too, though. So
yeah, and remember that idea behind it being medicinal. When we had our nutrition practice, and that's what we did full time. The question always arises from the parents. I can't get my kid to drink this stuff. What do I do? Well, you sneak it into everything. You sneak it into your asparagus. You sneak it into your braising. You sneak it into your vegetables that you're roasting. You sneak it into, we have a cookbook out, Healing Bone Broth Recipes Cookbook. And we sneak it into paleo waffles. Soup. Yes. So
Really?
paleo waffles.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
You use it in place of liquid when you're cooking, right? Every liquid that you would use. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think we're out of time.
Okay.
And I really appreciate your stopping by.
Yeah.
And
Thank you guys so much.
allowing
you
this
guys.
debate to live on in our office even longer. Thank
Yes. Yeah.
you. That's just great.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you guys so much.